Well, hello and happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to Mindset Monday. Today we have one of my favoriteest people in the whole world. We have Dr. Amanda joining us.
Hi.
And for those of you who don't know Amanda or Dr. Amanda, her and I go way back. And her and her husband are two of my favoriteest people in the planet. And they actually were present and stood for us at our wedding, which was I should know this. Oh
A
shoot,
long
like
time ago.
12 years ago now.
Uh,
Yeah. So yeah, we've got a good discussion lined up for today. And I'm really looking forward to kind of connecting with you, Dr. Amanda, and kind of picking your brain on some of this subject as far as we're going to dive into today. So,
Fantastic.
Dr. Amanda is a functional medicine doctor. Okay, she's trained in traditional Chinese medicine, and she's also a registered acupuncturist. So, I was curious, looking back into where your journey began, how did you first get interested in functional medicine?
Well, I was the little girl with the doctor dream. So way back in junior high school, that was outside of physical activity and playing sports. That was the subject that intrigued me. Right from the beginning, I wanted to be the Barbie doctor, be the doll doctor. It was always medicine. And as I grew up and learned more about the human body, it just, that was the only thing that made sense to me. Like, it didn't make sense to me figuring out how a car worked. It made sense to me how to figure out how our bodies worked. But I was a very rebellious child, and I was raised in an organic and very holistic family. So you're going to hurt yourself the second I start talking. Just using conventional medicine was just not something that my family did. If you had a headache, there was a tea. I was an asthmatic child, and we went to the naturopath. We didn't go to the conventional Western medical doctor for those kinds of little things. So that was the world that I knew, and my little rebellious heart just didn't really believe in that big pharmaceutical industry from a young age. So I wanted to explore medicine, but I wanted to do it, a little bit more holistically was the word we used way back when.
Right. Yeah, totally. Well, I certainly appreciate that holistic approach, and growing up in Salmon Arm, BC, is that right?
Right, yeah, good memory, Maddie.
Yeah, I can understand how, some of that might have influenced kind of your upbringing a little bit because, out here on the West Coast, we do things a little different, don't we?
Yeah, and I was raised like a little bit closer to Nelson. My mom was a little bit of a hippie, so.
Right. I love it. Yeah. So, in your opinion, what does functional medicine provide, or how does it differentiate from Western medicine as we know it, kind of like throughout the hospital and, like you said, big pharma?
Yeah, and what is functional medicine? Because it's a
Sure.
little
Yeah. Great
trendy
question.
title at the moment. My background is in traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and so that was my original training. That was my original thought process. Let's treat human beings by getting to the root imbalance, and let's correct that as naturally and organically as we can. So energy medicine really resonated with me. You use those little acupuncture pins to just sort of get the body to self-stimulate the healing process. My
Hmm.
specialization was always in women's hormone health. That's a little bit trickier when it comes to the world of energetic medicine. So I went back to school and became what is called a functional medicine practitioner. I still practice based on root cause imbalances and philosophies. But what I've done is I've combined my training using sort of the Eastern approach to healing and the conventional medical model. So when I work with my clients, it's always getting to the root cause behind their imbalances. I specialize in women's and hormone health, but I work with all kinds of different disorders, and I work with both men and women. So I treat the root cause insufficiencies or imbalances. So if you have a headache, what's going on there?
Right.
Is
Right.
it dehydration? Is it weather related? There is a root cause behind that headache. When it comes to hormones, I test them instead of just assuming and guessing what's going on. Like a standard blood requisition that you would get from your medical doctor, I use Western medical testing. It's just done more privately. So the world is my oyster as far as testing goes. when you see your medical doctor, they've kind of got a scale in which they use for their practice, and it's a little bit trickier to get them to think outside of that model. So my clients practice with me privately, and we can do a lot more. My treatment plans are as holistic as I can make them, but it is based off of as much science and Western medical philosophy as we can use.
Right. Yeah. So, I was going to ask, like, how do you see Western medicine complementing that kind of like either traditional, Chinese medicine or some of the more functional things? Is it mostly with some of the tests that they're able to provide then, or some of the assessments, or what's the best way
Yeah.
that Western medicine supports that?
In Canada, it's a little bit tricky. Our doctors and our modalities, it's a public run business. So
Right.
we don't complement each other as well as I wish we could. In the United States, in Europe, in Australia, in Asia, the East meets West a lot better than it does in Canada. We're way behind. I have a lot of clients who like the fact that they are working with their doctors like the fact that they're working with somebody like me. And they'll be a little bit more supportive on that side to sort of offer some of the blood requests that I have, chatted with my clients about. But at the end of the day, I'm not working with my clients and their medical doctors yet. One day I hope to be able to do that. I've had some of my clients, medical doctors say, what is that test she ran on you? Like, that is so cool. But unfortunately, until they redo their background and their practice, they're just not allowed to test that with their clients.
Right. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
I've for a long time I've believed in this kind of like holistic approach to well-being, and I'm of the belief that the more kind of perspectives and the more people that you can get on board to kind of like help kind of provide information and support, the better. And even back in the day when I owned and operated that fitness facility, personal training was a significant portion of what we did. But we also had like registered massage therapists, we had registered nutritionists, we had yoga practitioners, we had different counselors that would come in and give, and coaches that would lead discussion. And, I found that all of that was to the benefit of the client or the customer, and, all improve their experience and ultimately help support them succeed. So
Yeah.
I like that.
I
I
like to
think
think
it's
of we're like our body is like a toolbox.
right.
And the more tools we can put in that toolbox, the better off we are. So to just work with your medical doctor just gives you one opinion and one idea. To just work with somebody like myself, your functional medicine practitioner, there's a whole element and maybe segue into that emotional kind of aspect of healing. But there's a whole world of mental health that I'm not trained in. So what a disservice I would be doing to my clients to not stay in and help support them with other modalities, other tools for that toolbox.
Yeah, 100%. You said something there that I'm really interested in. You mentioned the word emotions, and uh, that's been a very significant topic for me in the last number of years. And I've gone through a process of healing and self-discovery as I worked through kind of my challenges with addiction and substance abuse and that sort of thing. And what I've come to understand is that emotional self-regulation played a big role in that.
Yeah.
My emotions, a lot of the pain and the things that I endured growing up factored into some of that sort of thing. And I've had to learn to understand my emotions, cope with them, and find better ways of dealing with them than just turning to a substance on the outside. But throughout that whole process, and I did a workshop on this a couple of years ago called Let Go to Grow
Mm,
and Forgive to Be Free. And it was really helpful for me to be able to like go through a process of kind of like letting go of some of the things that I was holding on to and finding forgiveness, not only from myself, that was significant, but also some of the people in my life that I had perceived either wrongdoing or that sort of thing.
yeah.
And I bring this up because you mentioned the emotional aspect of it, and I'm curious. I've heard different things throughout my work that the body stores emotions, and I'm curious. Like, is there any truth to that statement? And what do they mean when they say that? And do you have any like specific examples of what that looks like, or how that manifests itself?
Yeah. Um, I like to use this example of like, how do we store emotions? It is a
Hmm.
very subconscious and unintentional activity, and it happens daily. It happens hourly, sometimes by the minute. It's like being in your car in rush hour. I might maybe have more like road rage than the average human being. It is entirely possible, but this is the example that resonates with me and probably a lot of other people. You're stuck in rush hour. You have to get to a very important meeting. You have to be like on your A game, and you've got your two kids in the car as well. So you want to be yelling at the traffic. You want to be screaming and like white knuckled. You're frustrated. Your heart rate is skyrocketing, but you can't. You have a meeting you need to get to, level headed and focused, and you've got two kids in the backseat that don't need to hear you swearing. So you just kind of swallow it all, and you take those deep breaths, and you sweat, and you get to your meeting, you unload the kids, you get in the elevator, and you get up to your meeting, and you do your meeting. So all of that built up, whatever it was, tension, frustration, anger, it doesn't get a chance to go anywhere. And it just kind of locks itself somewhere in the body. So again, if we can use that like rush hour example, that is a pretty minor thing. What happens on a daily basis when we have a really stressful job, or maybe we're in a partnership that doesn't work well for us. Maybe our mental health is suffering. We don't have the tools we need. Where do these emotions go? They end up becoming stored within our body. Now, if you had been stuck in that rush hour for hours upon hours, days upon days, eventually there is like an implosion or an explosion that we have. We start crying. We maybe freak out at the bank teller because we just kind of can't keep ourselves under control anymore. It's like watching our wee little babes, those temper tantrums that they have. That's them, feeling all of those emotions, and that's them actually re-regulating their bodies. So as
Right.
adults, we've been told we're not allowed to, have temper tantrums. I try every once in a while, and my husband puts me in my place, but they're not okay. They're not normal when we are adults. We have been taught and told by society to regulate in ways that maybe aren't healthy, be seen and not heard. Don't be angry. Don't be too big. Don't be noisy. Don't, disobey your parents in public. So I believe that our generation is kind of coming out of a sort of feeling suppression, and we are
Mm.
starting to go, okay, I've got all these hopes and all these dreams, and my career is going so well, but something's stuck. And that's what I see with a lot of my clients. We'll work on their digestive system and their endocrine system, their nervous system. And about 6 months in, they'll say, hey, I'm like 70%, 80%, but there's something there. And that little piece that's not shifting makes me anxious. It's causing me sleeplessness. What is it? And so again, like we get to where we are often because of a healing journey of some kind in the world of holistic medicine, but with a background of energy medicine and energy regulation. It just got me thinking more and more about like what happens when we store that emotional stuff for too long. How does it end up dysregulating us?
Right. Yeah. Well, I love that analogy of the rush hour traffic and having to get to a meeting. I think that's something that all of us can relate on a micro scale, but you can see how something like that can compound, and how even on a bigger scale, like if you were to endure or experience something like that for months or years or decades, how it might eventually begin to take its toll. And there's a line, I'm not sure where I picked this up, but it really resonated with me. And that's that, emotions are meant to be expressed. It's a form of energy, and you can think of emotions as energy in motion.
Mm-hmm.
And our emotions are meant to be expressed. And emotions that don't get expressed become suppressed. And over time, that suppression eventually leads to either addiction, disease, or what's the other one? Addiction, disease, or depression. and I feel like you're right. You said something there, like our culture has kind of been taught collectively to suppress a lot of those emotions. So I'm curious, how do you typically see those emotions then manifesting themselves, or the suppressed energies and manifesting themselves? Is it in things like gut disorders? Is it anxiety, or is it like physical ailments like on the skin, or aches and pains, or a combination of all of it?
Yeah, the main symptoms, interestingly enough, that I think show up in my specific practice due to like a dysregulated emotional kind of feelings, and that emotional storage is bloating in the digestive system. I can work with a client for months and months and months, and we'll get rid of all their digestive system discomfort, but bloat. Aches and pain, the jaw and the shoulders are a place that we store a lot of really significant emotions. So my clients that are going to their dentist and getting their mouth guards, and using, like, needing chiropractic release in their occipital area and their jaw, we start talking about anger. The
Right.
thyroid it's something that's near and dear to my heart. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism after the birth of my daughter. That's where your voice is. So learning how to kind of say what you're feeling as opposed to suppressing. Headaches are another big one. Like, obviously our brain, the pressure in headaches I see, and just generalized anxiety. A lot of my clients who are having a hard time being true to themselves, and having the expression that they need, and healthily managing those emotions. Their body tells them that by making them feel ungrounded, giving them that sort of gnawing underlying mild anxiety.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting, because I've understood for a long time that our emotions have a way of physically manifesting themselves, and how closely connected our thoughts and our bodies are, our mind and our body.
Mm-hmm.
And I can recall a specific situation where uh, I had somebody in my life at one point who I never really felt connected with, but was a significant part of my family, and never really felt safe and secure around. And every time I got around this person, I developed this like severe stutter, which is really interesting. And it was like only around this one person. And it was like every time we get together, it's like, man, I really struggled to even get a sentence out. And I was like, I was beside myself. It's like, it's only in this situation. And I came across the work of Louise Hay. And I'm sure you're probably familiar with Louise Hay. She's written a number of different really influential books. One I think is called Heal Your Mind, Heal Your Body. And so I looked it up, and I looked up stutter. And the root cause of stuttering is like an inability to feel safe or to express yourself in that moment. And she provided some solutions to that particular situation. But I find that so interesting, that that's the power of our mind. And I have a friend right now who's struggling with, like, I think, is it TMJ, the
Yeah.
job?
Yeah.
TMJ. It's like super painful, can't even like open his mouth hardly. And coincidentally or not, he's in a high stress job. And depending on how you look at it, I think probably in a situation where maybe holds on to a lot of that, like anger or stress or things like that. So
Yeah. And stress is one of my favorite words in the world, because it's one of those things that we rely on, throughout our day to increase our cortisol and wake us up and motivate us and clear our mind to get us through the day. But when it comes to talking about emotions, and I am, oh, there's a word for it. It's like scrunchy, where I'm part granola and part like analytical and Western minded. So I love this philosophy, but if you take stress, it's a very loaded word. You're in a heightened state of fight or flight for too many hours of your day. Maybe it's a good stress, like working out, or maybe it's an intense stress, like you're presenting a case in front of a board, and you're feeling literally like negatively stressed by that. What happens is that cortisol that we overproduce when we're in that fight or flight state, it actually decreases our body lymphocytic production, which
Mm.
means that if we were then exposed to a virus or a bacteria, our white blood cell count would be physically lowered from that heightened and elevated stress response, and we would potentially have a harder time fighting off that bug. So our immune system is tied, and there are studies upon studies to show that stress, good or bad, can have that negative effect on the body. So stress is one of those big emotional words. Stress is it's a physical feeling, as well as an emotional feeling.
Right, interesting. Yeah. Well, we've had a couple of people come and speak to this group specifically about stress, because that's one of those things too that I'm super fascinated in, and just trying to even understand what is stress and how does it differ from different people and how does it manifest itself in the body and how do you manage it effectively and that sort of thing. But I understand that you do a workshop, or you've done a couple of workshops specifically around emotions. And I'm curious, two-part question here. What, in your opinion, are some of the like most dangerous or harmful emotions to hold on to? Is that anger? Is it stress? Is it resentment? And two, how might you go about releasing some of your emotions in, like you said, kind of a socially acceptable way rather than just blowing up at the
Not a
next
temper
random stranger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't believe that there are some that are worse than others. I think that that's a societal kind of regulation that we've sort of been told. Anger's the bad one. Sadness is weak. I think that it doesn't, and some of us have high and big emotions, and some of us produce like smaller emotions, and that's okay. So just feeling our feelings at the end of the day is so important. And it really, like, sometimes it is literally at the end of the day we've kind of just had to suppress to get ourselves through the day in an appropriate fashion. And then by the end of the day it's like tapping in, like, whoa, okay, do I feel regulated? Do I feel calm? Do I feel sad? Do I feel ungrounded? Do I feel frazzled? And what can I do about it? Like, emotions come up so often. Do I have a safe space in the moment to just feel this? Is it something that makes me kind of want to go, like, our family does a lot of like somatic release. So are you feeling just like you need to go, "Ugh," and my kids and I will like kind of get into that sometimes. If I'm frazzled and I'm getting hit left, right, and center, but I don't have a positive way to do that, I'll just say to my kids, like, okay, deep breath, and like, let's roar, like, let's get this out. With
Well,
kids, it's actually fun, and it's really healthy for them to see that. Again, not something that my husband could use in the middle of a business meeting. So it's appropriate more often in my day than his, potentially, maybe more appropriate in my day than yours. But at the end of the day, can we go, I feel, or like, get that out. I feel like smashing a pillow, or, I don't know, grabbing a thing of ice and just hitting it on the ground. Do I feel like I just want to kind of self-reflect and write about this, or sing about this, dance about this? Do I want to cry? Is everything built up so much that release needs to happen? So I don't think there's any specifically that need let out more. Like I said, sometimes mine is just, it's a busyness. It's a busyness, and it builds up and builds up, and it's an overstimulation. And I just need to go like, and out it comes. It's that like somatic vibration that actually is a healing tool. So I work virtually with my clients. So this is how I practice with my patients. So there isn't a lot that I can do for them to help them with this emotional release. It's just not a great environment for that. Working virtually is amazing for so many different things, but it isn't a really good way to coach somebody through emotions. So I work with a group of amazing human beings, and I just kind of have this idea, like, my clients are struggling with this emotional regulation, and here is this idea I have for them. Let's create like a workshop style space for them to come in and process and release that in a safe and secure environment. A chance for them to be their vulnerable, open selves, where everyone's kind of come together to do that same thing. So I have a 3-hour workshop that is in person. And I do it with 2 other practitioners with a very similar background to mine. And we come in, and the day is about sharing space and meditating. We use a herbal concoction that actually kind of helps stimulate that physical energy. We do a yoga session, a journal session, and then we actually end it with an acupuncture session. Acupuncture I find to be one of the most, and I no longer practice, it is one of the most effective ways of just stimulating your body to start to process some of this emotional storage without you even having any idea that it's going on. I used to come into my room when I was seeing clients as an acupuncturist, and more often than not, my clients would be having an emotional reaction, either in tears or feeling anxious, feeling like uncomfortable, and something was going to happen later to them for them to sort of be provoked to have that cry or get that anger out.
Right. So I've never actually had acupuncture done to myself. I've seen it, I've observed it. We're probably all familiar with it on kind of like a surface level. But what is it about acupuncture? What specifically is it doing? And how does it, is it through the myofascial tissue, or is it like certain pressure points or something that allow people to tap into that emotion, or?
Yeah, that is such a loaded question. So at the end of the day, we are energetic beings. Energy
Sure.
is what moves the cells and the water in our body. So
Right.
there is that sort of subconscious philosophy that we, like within our cells, can store some of that emotional tension. But that's at the end of the day where we store a lot of our physical ailments as well. So the tapping into the actual tissue of our body stimulates that energy movement. It stimulates our cells to move. But it's not so much that muscle, it's actually going into that like energetic body. So it is definitely, there's a bit of a belief system behind it as well. It's a very, very ancient medicine created in countries that believed in that, the energetic ability to heal the body. So I no longer practice because I did find I wanted to do something a little bit more conventionally minded with my clients, but I love it because it is one of those tools for my clients' tool belt or toolbox to help with their mental health. And that's not something I'm working on with my clients as much anymore. So pretty cool.
Super cool. I mean, I'm totally into that type of thing, and you don't have to sell me on the energetic body and that sort of thing. So, Amanda, I realize we're bumping up against time here. Do you have a couple of more minutes, or do you got to
I
run?
sure do. Yeah, I
You
do
okay?
have
Beautiful.
I do have a sidekick now.
Hey, right on. Hey, Mister. um, you mentioned that checking in with yourself or tapping into yourself, and was there anything specific that you're doing with that, or is that just kind of like doing a check-in with yourself where you're just asking yourself, hey, how am I feeling, how am I doing with this, what does that look like, what do I need right now, and asking yourself some of those questions?
Yeah, both actually. So you can kind of have that question with yourself. It takes practice though. It takes practice for you to actually be able to come into that body and feel what you're feeling. So one of the tools that I use is like actual weight, those weighted blankets that are really trendy right now actually help us come into our body. That's why they're so helpful for regulating children and children's emotions. It's why they're so helpful for sleep. Dysregulated emotions show up in insomnia and anxiety all the time. So if you actually took like a weighted blanket or a weighted bean bag or something like that, and the shoulders, like I said, the shoulders and jaw,
Right.
holding on to those emotions, hard to access the jaw, but we can access our shoulders. So if we took something weighted and comfortable and we actually threw it around our neck and on our shoulders, you can often get a sense of like nervous system regulation and coming back into your body. And if you're on the journey of like self-reflection, it's interesting to see what can come up. It's very safe. It's like getting a hug from
I was
someone.
just gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, it gives you that protection you need, that safe space, so you can administer to that yourself. Much different than like a bath. Let's go and have a hot bath, and we actually need
Right.
that physical force to bring us back into our body.
Right. That's really interesting. And I've heard of studies that they do in hospitals where patients recovering from surgery or in later life and things like that, who didn't have a lot of people that were coming to visit them, they filled up like rubber gloves full of like warm water, and they had them just kind of like hold their hand or hold this rubber glove like it was somebody's hand. And those people, their bodies produced the hormones or the chemical response that was needed in order to help heal. And they saw like an increase, either in longevity or in survival
And
rate
just
when it
pain
came to
management too. Yeah, all
pain
those things.
management. Yeah, interesting. Who do you look up to as far as either mentors or role models, or who inspires you as far as kind of professionally speaking?
Yeah. This might sound strange, and this is like the typical mom response, close your ears. But my daughter is actually the human being in my life right now. I have an almost 7-year-old daughter. She is the one that has motivated me to get more in touch with myself more than anybody in this whole entire world. She is my genetic clone. So she knows exactly how to press my buttons and make me a bad version of myself. And what parent wants to be a bad version of themselves in front of their child? So she's taught me how to come into my body, stabilize myself, process an emotion in a really holistic and healthy way, so that I can give her those tools. Last summer she wanted to have a lemonade stand and sell bracelets. She's like an entrepreneur.
Cool.
So she had put all this energy and effort into this little lemonade stand and her bracelets. And this little fella and his friend were 1.5, and they came up to her booth and destroyed it. Threw her straws on the ground, they just wanted to be involved, but she was not okay with it. So she looked at this little guy and she looked at his friend, who I am friends with the mom, and she lost it, screaming, red in the face, stiff as a board, screaming. And I almost looked at my friend and said, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh. And instead, I looked at Sophia and I said, what a beautiful way to explore how pissed off you are right now. And I looked at my husband and I said, you need to take this little one because he's a part of the problem. I said to my girlfriend, I think it's time to go. And she had her epic anger, fury, and it was beautiful. And I looked at her afterwards and I was just like, well done. Like, that was so warranted. Your little sail was totally disrupted by these 2 hurricanes, and that's not okay. Totally okay to feel the way that you felt. And she just felt so well respected afterwards, and it gave her this dinosaurs. Yeah, it gave her this whole new appreciation for like, oh, I didn't get in trouble when I did that. It was actually welcomed. So I mean, I could list a bunch of really cool doctors' names, and you inspire me in different ways. But it is at this point in my life, my 7-year-old daughter that holds me accountable and gets me thinking about the hard things in life.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. I love that. And isn't that so true though, how like, we think we're here teaching our kids all the things that they need to know, but man, do we ever, it's a two-way street, I tell you. And I learn just as much, if not more, from them than they ever do from me. But imagine that. Hey, I remember growing up, having an outburst or something like that. What are we usually told? Or our generation was like, go to your room, you're in timeout, and you sit there until you're ready to come out. And unconsciously, we're kind of like taught to like, don't express those emotions, or don't share how you're feeling, or things like that. And the fact that this next generation, and I know that a number of the parents that are on the call today, we've had similar conversations about being able to raise our kids in an environment where they're emotionally aware, their EQ is so much higher. We had a situation last week or 2 weeks ago now where I was kind of tearing up and getting kind of choked up, and I was having a conversation with Anna and working through something, and Ezra came up to me. Ezra came up to me and said, it's okay to cry, Dad. He said, it's actually your body that's releasing that emotion. He says, it'll help you feel better. So give it a go. And I was like, oh, dude, you're smarter, way smarter at that age than I ever was. And the fact that they're clued into that and having some of those awarenesses at that age gives me hope for where we might be headed, in future generations for sure.
Yeah, and
So,
we are in that mental health crisis. And I think our generation will shift the next generation to be, a little bit more accessible to who they are as a human. And, that just radiates.
yeah, 100%. So, one more question here for you before I let you run here. But what do you see as the future of like either functional medicine, or how do functional medicine and Western medicine come together, or do you see them becoming more, divergent?
Yeah, so when I studied functional medicine, we jumped on my professor was Chris Kresser. He's pretty
Right.
well known in like the world of Instagram and Paleolithic lifestyle. He was my professor, and we had like a meet and greet, and it was session number 1. And I saw like 99, 100, 110, 160 people jump on our practice number 1. And you could see everyone's credentials popping up. And I'm a lowly little acupuncturist, doctor of Chinese medicine, and it's medical doctor, gynecologist, medical doctor, medical doctor, medical doctor. I would say that 2% of my entire school was holistic minded individuals, and holy moly was I intimidated. But every single one of those medical doctors wanted retraining so that they were no longer
Mm,
prescribing medications to their clients. They were learning how to work differently with their patients. And Chris Kresser looked at me and he's like, interestingly enough, you have the closest background to what like we're studying. So it was really amazing to see. Again, it's an American program. Canada is a little bit further behind, but it was amazing to see that many Western medical doctors start to go, oh, my client's really depressed. I think they might need something more than an antidepressant. That might not be the solution here. So I think that more and more, again, we're a pretty feisty generation. We're kind of saying enough is enough. I don't like the way it looks. Let's change this. So I think that people are starting to ask for their health to be looked at a little bit more seriously by practitioners that have a little bit more time to spend with them.
mm.
We're more conscious of the things that we're putting into our body, the exposures that we have. Again, we're seeing our kids growing up in a world with lots of chemicals. So people are starting to shift their mindset.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Well, any real like, simple tips or suggestions that you feel like, you've observed some of your clients either lacking, or that you would suggest that everybody do, like, whether that's a supplement or a practice, or whether it's just quality sleep, or anything that's just kind of like a, hey, foundational, basic, everybody should be doing this.
Yeah, you know what I say to my clients all the time? Less is more. We live in
Right.
an overstimulating world where we all put an insane amount of pressure on ourselves. We have access to so much information. We're on social media and seeing other people on social media do better than we are. They're raising their kids better. They have a more successful business. So when my clients come to me and they're anxious and they're not grounded and they don't feel well, I say delete so much of
Right.
the world around you and just go home, come to your body, put your feet on the ground, move, drink water, prioritize yourself. Easier said than done, but I like the philosophy is less than more, because we really are starting to go into overwhelm mode. There's a million things I can be reading and taking and doing, and it gets pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, 100%. I think we could probably all relate to that for sure.
That and magnesium.
Okay, there you go. You heard it. You heard it. Right on. Um, well, what's the best way to get in contact with you, or to learn more if anybody's interested in kind of following up?
Yeah, I have a website, and that is where all my clients find me. I offer a free 15-minute consult to sort of figure out if you and I are compatible. My website is dramandaselmser.com. It's a bit of a funny last name, Selmser. You can connect with Matt afterwards and ask about that. But dramandaselmser.com. I offer free 15-minute consults, and it's just a place for us to kind of say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I do. Is this aligned? I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, Dr. Amanda Selmser. I'm currently taking a social media break because less is more.
Nice.
So I think that finding people on their website, mine has a ton of information. That's the best place to take a peek.
Beautiful. Well, I want to say thank you so much for being here, Dr. Amanda. Does anybody have any specific questions or anything that has come up during the conversation that they'd like to ask her while we have a moment? Do you have another minute here, Amanda?
I sure do.
Yeah, Tamara.
So my question was, when we're telling the story about your daughter, so let's say, for example, that there's a meltdown or a temper tantrum by a child, but it's not really warranted. Like, say, she had a really devastating thing happen for her. So that's okay. If it happened to us, we would probably be upset too. But what if it's just like, you can't have the candy bar today? Do you still like encourage that expression, or is that enabling like a whole?
Yeah, because I think of the temper tantrum, like at the 2.5-year level, it is just an emotional release. Their brain just doesn't understand why they can't have it. So the amount of temper tantrums in our house is epic, next level. You would look in at my house and go, these people do not have it in control. But there are boundaries. So I love the word boundaries when it comes to parenting. One of the conversations I'll have with both of my children, if I'm overwhelmed, if their tantrum is starting to make me angry or feel unsafe, I'll say, hi, mom is saying no. That is a boundary that I have with the chocolate bar right now. No means no. I'm going to remove myself from you while you're kind of in this space. I'm here to hug and hold you when you need. But everyone knows when they're in that state, like they just want to kick and scream and they want that space. And then there's all those tools for like distraction at the age of like 2. At 6, it's very different. But generally speaking, if you don't fight with it, if you kind of have that conversation, like this is a boundary mom has, we don't have chocolate bars at 4:59 at night, it's almost dinner time. They do come out of it relatively quickly. And I've been told that the tantrums will eventually come to an end.
Okay.
But that's so hard, especially when it dysregulates us.
And then at what age would it be like where they will understand? So you're saying like the two-year-old that's acceptable, but at what point is it kind of like they understand what they're doing and it's not acceptable?
Yeah, I don't know, but I will say that my 6-year-old is now starting to understand the boundaries. Like we can't be asking mom a million questions in the car. That is not safe for me. I'm going to create a boundary here where we're talking less in the vehicle. And she's starting to understand that. And then if she's being disrespectful to that, we have to have that conversation, right? We can have rules and regulations to manage those boundaries, but still have that safe emotional expression available as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tamara. Any other final questions there before we let Dr. Amanda go? Okay, well, Dr. Amanda, I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. It's always great to see you. It's been a long time since we've been able to connect, but you're awesome. And so I certainly appreciate you taking time out of your day and your schedule to be here, and also to meet the little guy here too. So I've seen pictures and stuff online.
Hi, thanks for having me. I love everything about, the human body and mind. So to share some of my nerdiness it was so fun. Thanks for having me.
That's awesome. Well, take care, everybody, and we'll talk soon.
Happy holidays to all.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.